Good morning. It's Monday morning. We continue the adventures of Peter in Acts chapter 9, verses 36 through 43. There was in Joppa a disciple named Tabitha, which translated means Dorcas. She was full of good works and acts of charity. In those days she became ill and died, and when they had washed her, they laid her in an upper room. Since Lydda was near Joppa, the disciples, hearing that Peter was there, sent 2 men to him, urging him, "Please come to us without delay." So Peter rose and went with them. When he arrived, they took him to the upper room. All the widows stood beside him, weeping and showing tunics and other garments that Dorcas made while she was with them. But Peter put them all outside and knelt down and prayed, and turning to the body, he said, "Tabitha, arise." And she opened her eyes. When she saw Peter, she sat up. And he gave her his hand and raised her up. And then, calling the saints and widows, he presented her alive. And it became known throughout all Joppa, and many believed in the Lord. And he stayed in Joppa for many days with one Simon, a tanner. So we have the raising, the healing of Dorcas, so known as Tabitha, and it's Aramaic is Tabitha and Greek is Dorcas. They both mean gazelle, I think, something like that. So it's not the same word. It's translated, right. So she was a person who was quite the seamstress, I think, and did lots of things and gave lots of things to people, gave things away. And so all the widows were wearing the garments that she'd made for them, and they were showing off how good they were constructed and the needlepoint and I don't know what all. And and Peter gets there and puts them all out of the room, prays, and then turns to Dorcas and says, "Arise, Tabitha, arise." And she wakes up, and he helps her out of bed and presents her to her friends alive. And, of course, everybody knows about this because they've all known that Dorcas was somebody who was fairly well known in the community, and now she had died, and now suddenly she's not dead anymore. So that spreads the news, I guess. And it says 2 interesting things. One is that it says that Peter stayed with Simon, a tanner. Now, if Peter had his choice where he's going to stay, it wouldn't be with a tanner. Tanning was nasty work. You took animals and you had to skin them and then prepare the skins with certain stinky sorts of solutions, chemicals we would call them, but whatever they used. And then you had the carcass of the body, and you had to deal with that and get rid of that, and it was unclean work. And so it smelled bad, and it wasn't ritually pure. And this is not the sort of place that Peter, as a faithful Jew, would have been. But yet there he is. I suspect he was friends with this Simon, and I suspect Simon was also a believer, and so they were buddies, and he stayed there with him. All of which sets up what's coming. So that's one thing about this story. Another thing that strikes me is that the people around Dorcas, all of whom were Christians, nobody prays to bring her back from the dead. Only Peter does that, and Peter is sort of their hero. Peter is the famous preacher. Peter is the one they want. Let's get Peter to come. He'll do it. And I suppose there's some good and some bad there. In this case, it's good. Peter comes and does the work, and he doesn't have a lot of ego involved here. He prays for her, and she's raised up. It's not always that way with famous preachers, let me tell you, and sometimes they get they know how important they are. Let's put it that way. And I've been around some who were really, really friendly and nice and, just ordinary guys. And I've been around some who knew how important they were and who were not afraid to share that. Peter's not like that, though Peter seems to be the only one who can pull off this sort of a miracle, which I suppose is okay. And it encourages me as a kind of ordinary Christian that, we're going to be ordinary Christians. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't all have to be famous. We don't all have to be genius Bible teachers. We don't all have to be perfect. We just have to be who we are and remain faithful. God never calls us actually to be good. He calls us to be faithful. And there's somewhat of a difference there. So let's remain faithful, whatever our station in the church is, and let's enjoy the day. See you tomorrow.